Hello everyone, welcome to another video. My name is Mario So, and today we'll be talking about what we know so far about the up and coming Sony A7S III. So it's nice to see you here again. My name is Mario So. I create weekly content on filmmaking, gear review, and editing tutorials. If that's something you think you'll be into, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And if you're a returning subscriber, it's so good to see you here again. So July has been an insane month for camera geeks. Canon just dropped 2 bombs last week with specs that were just mind-blowing. It was very impressive hearing about all these specs that were on the Canon R5 and R6. And a couple days ago, we heard from Sony Alpha rumors, we heard that the Sony A7S III is finally coming to town. Or it might not be called the Sony A7S III, but it will be the successor to the A7S II, the low light king. It's very insane that these companies are coming with specs that were only seen before in the more expensive cinema cameras. And the fact that we include all these specs in mirrorless cameras, that's just no words. But in today's video, I would like to talk more about the upcoming successor to the Sony A7S II. I'd like to talk about what features we know it has and what features I personally would like to see on this camera. I have to say that I've been shooting both on Canon and Sony cameras and also Panasonic cameras with the old GH3 and GH4. So I'm not really in any bandwagon here. I'm not in any team. All cameras have their pros and cons. It really depends on what suits your style and what suits whatever you're shooting. And having shot with the Sony A7S II and currently the A7 III, which is currently my go-to main camera, I can say that I've been pretty happy with Sony. In the last couple of years, I've become more of a hybrid shooter, so I shoot video and photography both on the same body. This is one of the big reasons why I'm in love with the A7 III. This is what we know about the A7S III so far, or we don't even know if it's going to be called the A7S III, but we now know that the S stands for superior rather than sensitivity, which was the case for the A7S and the A7S II. So Sony has said that this new camera is going to be completely brand new with a brand new sensor. So it will come with a 12 megapixel sensor. Yes, you heard it right, 12 megapixels. Some camera phones have a higher megapixel count than this up and coming new sensor camera, but let me explain a little bit. So the idea behind these 12 megapixels is that Sony wants to create a purely 4K camera. Sony will increase the size of each individual pixel. This in turn increases the ISO sensitivity, which makes it better for low lights. This will be a brand new sensor that will have a very fast readout, and it will reduce a lot of the rolling shutter that we used to see on the A7S and the A7S II. If you're mostly a photographer, this will not be the camera for you, especially if you're doing prints with your photos. The 12 megapixel count might just not cut it. But if you are mainly a filmmaker or a videographer, you do wedding videography or product shoots, and all you need is the 4K video and the occasional still for social media posting, then this camera might suit you. And because the megapixel count is only 12, that means that the camera won't have to do all this mathematical computation when it tries to crunch in all the numbers and produce a 4K output, which is the case with the Canon R5, which has a 45 megapixel count. So when that camera is trying to compress all of that, crunch all that information into a 4K video, it's going to require a lot more computational power. And maybe that's why there are these rumors that the camera overheats. So knowing this, we will have to say goodbye to 6K or 8K on this camera because that would require either 24 or 33 megapixel count. We also know that this camera is going to shoot 240 frames per second in full HD, which would be crazy for super slow motion. We also know that this camera is going to shoot at 4K at 120 frames per second in 4:2 10-bit format. This is all done internally without the need of an external recorder. But if you attach that external recorder, you can record all of this in RAW. Keep in mind that if you shoot RAW footage, you're going to need a lot of computer power to edit that footage. The following features are things that we have heard that might be coming on this camera but haven't been fully confirmed. If you are someone who does documentary filmmaking, run and gun scenarios, shoot weddings, you gotta be happy that this camera is not going to have a recording limit. I remember back in the day shooting with the Canon 6D or even the Nikon D800. Yes, I used Nikon to shoot videos before. The recording limit was about 12 minutes or 24 minutes, something around those lines. And I remember stressing out about it all the time when I used to do wedding work, especially when we're running multiple camera setups in the ceremony. It was just stressful. We also know that this camera will be shooting in a new H.265 codec, the XEVC. In terms of looks, we're hearing that it will look very similar to the A7R IV. Another thing I'm hearing about is that it will include a cooling vent or an internal fan, which will help prevent the camera from overheating, especially in a hot summer day. Other cameras like the Panasonic S1H already have a cooling vent, so it's really good that Sony is stepping up and including this as well. Another thing that we've heard so far is that the base ISO for Lock 3, S-Lock 3 is going to be 160, only 160. And the max ISO is going to be 409,600 for video. The legacy of the low light king continues. Sony claims this camera will also have 15 stops of dynamic range. That is pretty insane. And the last thing that we're hearing is that this camera, Sony will finally include an articulating flip out screen. So we know that the A64 and the A6600 have the flip up screen, but it's not the best because when you try to mount a shotgun mic, sort of like in the way and you can't really see yourself properly. But those screens were a big step up from previous Sony cameras like the A6300, A6500, A7S, A7S2, A7 III, A7 II, which all had that flippy screen that didn't go all the way up. So this new camera is going to have an articulating screen similar to the one on the ZV-1, which is amazing. I don't know why it took Sony so long to come up with this. I used to shoot on the Panasonic's GH3 maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and that camera already had a flip out articulating screen. Patience is a virtue, I guess. So next I'll be talking about some features that would make me really happy if this camera included them. The first one is if this camera includes a next level flip out screen similar to the one that the Panasonic S1H has, which is a hybrid of a flip up as well as a fully articulating screen. I would enjoy it a lot if Sony kept the double SD card slot like the A7 III. I just don't feel like purchasing CF Express cards because the costs are a lot higher, and I believe that SD cards over even the more expensive fast SD cards will drop in price because they're more accessible. I would also like Sony to make the screen fully touchscreen enabled, so it's not just used to tap focus, but it would be great if you can adjust other settings by touching the screen. Lastly, when Sony says that everything will be new in this camera, I really hope that the menu system will be new as well. Just give us an easy to decrypt menu. Now that we know some of the specs that will possibly be included in this camera, would I purchase this camera? I don't know. Like I said earlier, I have now become a hybrid shooter, so I shoot photos and videos, and I like the idea of having access to high resolution stills in case I want to print them. With a 12 megapixel count on this new camera, I'm not sure what the photos will look like once you print them out. I'll wait and see when the camera is released to see some sample photos printed out to see what that looks like. Another thing I would like to say too is that I probably won't be pre-ordering it. I'm very happy with the current A7S III that I have. It's been great for corporate work, running gun scenarios, product shoots that I'm doing at home. It's been great for portraits as well as wedding videography. So right now I do not find the need to upgrade, but we'll see. Maybe I might be convinced after this camera is released. So that is all for today's video. I hope that you are very pumped up about all of these new camera announcements coming up. If you enjoyed me rambling about camera specs and just being a total camera geek, I'll appreciate it if you subscribe so we can see each other soon after this camera is released. So let me know in the comments below what kind of features you would like to see on this new A7S III camera. And that is all for today, guys. Until next time.